Good morning. Got my camera messed up. There it is. Hi. I just looked at my checking account. I got money. Sorry. I was like, what? So it took me a second. Have you checked yours? Do you have money? Nice to have money. So. Yup, the stimulus money. I think my account won't load, but it has more money than it did. So something happened. So it won't actually load the detail, but yoo-hoo. So, and I was, morning. We haven't filed for 2019, so I thought we would be a little bit later. 2018 filers. We got to do 2019 today something, huh? File an extension. Yay. How are you guys this morning? It's early. Everybody's doing good. Got a bunch here. Not quite everybody yet, but we'll get there. I'm ready to get started. I'm going to shut off this video. Before we get started, anybody have any questions or anything? You know, can stay after to work out any sort of TFS problems. I think there's still some people that might be having a little bit of issue, not sure, but if you are, you can be sure to stay after and we'll get you fixed up. Working with some people on advising, let me know if you would like to meet about what classes you're going to take and your schedule and everything, because we can sure take a look if I'm your advisor or not. All right, let me turn this off. Video and share my screen. What I have up right now is our application that we were working on last time. And it is posted on Discord in our General 101 chat. So the zip file itself is named a little bit differently to add the list, but it is the same application, just the one that we've added the list box to. So if you don't have it, you can grab it from there. And then as we develop our form app, our form class itself starts getting a little bit busy because we end up with a lot of methods because of all those event procedures. And we can right click on our form and view the class diagram. Now remember, if you don't have that option in Visual Studio, you might have to use your tools, add, remove options, or add new item and then find class diagram. So you can actually add it to your project like that. Okay, so I'm looking at my class diagram for my form, and you can see it's a lot more meaningful than some of our other class diagrams, right? They're all important because they give us good information, but this one can really summarize what's going on in the form for me. So I see all my form fields because they're my data fields, and then I see all of my different methods that are associated with our form. So we have our constructor, our form load, some of the methods we've created, and then our OK click event and our click event on our selected index. So we can see all of them. See if I can get my display set so I can be sure to not miss if somebody has a question. So that is our application, kind of our form in a nutshell. We're going to come back to that. I wanted to look at a couple of really short pieces of information. The first one is kind of a review because you guys are doing this all the time, but sometimes it's important to look at what we have going on in our code. So let's look at this one little teeny code snippet. Here I have a picture box, and we're looking at the click event. So someone has clicked on this picture, If they do that, we want to make label 1 visible. So not too complicated. But if we break it down, remember when we're working with a control on our form and we want to change a property, we use the name of the control first, and then a period or a dot, and then the property name of the control. The property identifier here, this full piece of information, is multi-part. So we have the control name and the property name. So sometimes you'll get a compile error if you leave out that property. Sometimes you won't, and it'll just confuse things. But we always have to have our control followed by an individual property. Now the different parts, of course, are separated by the period or the dot, and our new property value is on the other side of the equal sign. So we can kind of summarize what all those different parts are. Some of our form controls can be, properties are Booleans, and like our visible property. In this example, we've expanded our picture box click event a little bit to add an if statement. So here we're checking, is that label already visible? If so, let's turn it off. Otherwise, let's turn it on. I have some code here. I'll show you. So that one's kind of making it a toggle, isn't it? Like we would see, you know, in an application. I'm going to go to code here. You don't have to. I just want to show you real quick how we can do some cool things with our visible and enabled properties if we wanted to. Last time we created this enable disable method, and we said that we're going to pass it in a Boolean value of true or false, and that we'll use to determine whether our property is enabled or disabled. I had a student that did this before that was really interesting code. So let's think about it. If we always wanted to make it the opposite of what it is right now, could we really think? Can't use that keyword not. I was some other language. I could say whatever the text box enabled property is now, I want to set it to the opposite by using that not keyword. So that's another way we could accomplish everything that's being done in that if statement. So think about that one for a minute, because it's some interesting way of doing things, really efficient. Okay, so we have these Boolean properties that we can set to true or false. Got it. We have string properties like our text box. If we want to save the value that is in a text box, we'll have a variable name and we'll set it equal to the text box controls text property. So our form control will be on the right side of the equal sign as the data that is being used. Whenever we're wanting to read, there it goes. Whenever we're wanting to update the value of a text box, the text box name would be on the other side of the equal sign, right? Because we're setting it equal to a new value. In this example, we're clearing the text box by setting it equal to 2 double quotes. And we also saw that we have a method name associated with text boxes that we can use to clear them. So our total syntax, whenever we're working with form properties, they are just properties, just like a property with a getter and a setter that we would create in our classes. So if we want to get the value, we are going to have a variable to hold the value, followed by an equal sign, followed by the property name that we want to get. If we want to set a property value, we're going to have the name of that property, followed by the equal sign, followed by the value we want to set it to. Now, sometimes just saying that out loud is kind of difficult because it can be so inherent in our thinking. So just, make sure that it's inherent in your thinking. So some common conventions. We've been working on our forms a little bit, and I've already kind of used some of these things, and we've made some comments about some of them. Basically, our form controls are added to the form by you, the developer. We've seen that form control names start with lowercase, and we can get some warnings and messages for that. A lot of programmers like to use a prefix to identify what type of control they're using. We've been using the full text box prefix, which is kind of long, but I think it's the clearest for us when we're starting out. We'll often see that abbreviated a little bit to like txtbx. That can get kind of messy with our .text property. Button will often be abbreviated BTN, label LBL, form FRM. So we see some common abbreviations. And as our C# coding conventions change, we'll see those being converted slowly to uppercase control names. In general, we want to give a good name to our controls that are going to be accessed in the code. So if I were to be grading something that had text box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's where on our rubric we have that item that says it uses proper naming standards and conventions. That would not be proper naming conventions, because just leaving those text box names is just way too confusing for the next person that comes along. Now, whenever we create our controls, we've seen that we can access the properties of the control using the predetermined names. They're already out there. We combine the name of the control with the property name separated by a dot. And we can change or set those property values in design time when we're developing our form, developing our applications, or we can have code in our application that changes those property values at runtime when the application is running. So, yay. Giving us all of those controls that we need. Okay, that one's quick. Let's look at this application. Now, that presentation was talking about forms, and we've been working with our code, our C# code that is associated with our form. If we look at our form in Solution Explorer and expand it, we'll see that there's a little bit more behind the scenes. I'm going to expand this form1.designer.cs and form1, and we're just kind of look and see, oh, and there's finally all of our information in our code. So the form is not just one C# file like our program.cs. It's a combination of things. So since it's kind of a package, we have to be careful with it. We have to, make sure that we're saving it properly. And this is where Visual Studio and the Save All button gets super important, because we want to be saving all of these things that were done behind the scenes for us. We can see that code that's been done behind the scenes for us if we click on our form1 designer.cs. This also is a partial class. When we're working on our code in our form1.cs file, it is a partial class. So these two partial classes will be combined together to make one full class by the C# compiler. I'm going to go back to that one. Now, when I'm looking at the designer code, we have a region here that says this is the Windows Form Designer generated code. And they'll say things like, don't change this code. It's really, really, scary and stuff, but it's really not. Here, we're just saying that we're creating a label named label 1. The data type label, or the class, is prefixed by all of this library information to tell the system exactly where to find it. But this is basically just a data definition, just the same as we would declare a variable. They're just declaring a variable that is a data type label, and it's named label 1. So you'll see that each of the controls on our form is declared in that way as the form type. So radio button. So that's understandable. Now, if we expand this other section, click, you'll notice in our constructor of our form, we run the method initialize component. Well, here is that method, initialize components. And it actually goes through and creates instances of each of those controls that were declared. So our new labels, all that great stuff. So we can see that everything is getting generated by this form designer code. Now, here's where we're setting all of the properties for label 1. So every property that needs to be set is being set. And then we set all the properties for label 2, label 3, label 4. So we could actually create code like this ourselves if we wanted to dynamically add something to our form. We could let this form designer code do it. Either way. Now, as I scroll through, notice that we're going to see all of the different property settings for all of our different controls. And finally, we're going to get to a control like our OK button that has an event procedure associated with it. All the other code we've seen so far has been standard, but this is a little different. Within our association of our event procedure, our OK_click method, we have this special code. So let's take a look a little bit more about that. This is also the line of code that you have to delete out if you accidentally double click on something. You know how it'll create that event procedure for you in your code. You go in and you delete it out because you're like, what is this? I didn't create it. I don't want it. And then you get that error. And we knew from the very first day, we just click on that view code icon and delete out the line of code that was in error. Well, it's this line that's associating our event procedure with our control. Excuse me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. That is actually a delegate. When we're working with event-driven programming, we are programming based on events, and we're all used to events driving us. So if we have an event to attend, we are wired to the process that occurs at that event. We can think about that, right? So if I'm going to have a birthday party, I'm going to plan the event. I'm going to set up all of the properties of it. I'm going to decide the location, the time, the date, all of the important information I need about that event. And then when it actually occurs, we'll have our event being fired. This awesome picture shows you more. Whenever we're working with a Windows form, and this is the same in Java and other event-driven programming languages, but we have our user interacting with our form. So they do something like click a button. Now within Windows, that button is associated with a method, right? Before that method happens, that event has been noted to have occurred. So when the event occurs, our C# code that associates our event procedure with an event gets to run. So here we are, our piece of C# code runs. So somebody clicked the button or the picture box, we do something. Because of that code running, the form's appearance is updated or modified in some way, and then it's displayed again, waiting for another event. So again, different than console-based programming. Delegates let us set up some of these events. These pictures are of delegates. When you think of a delegate, it is something that you have given authority to, right? Like, I delegated control to this person. We see that a lot happening in different things, right? But what happened to the project I delegated to you? I delegated it. It's this guy's fault. And that happens often because when we're working with a team, we're going to delegate responsibility for different tasks to different people. Well, that's kind of what a C# delegate is. A C# delegate connects our C# code, our method, with a form event. And whenever we connect those two, that's called wiring. We're wiring that event. Now, a delegate actually has even more power than that. Whenever we're working with a delegate in C#, we could have multiple functions or methods that are created. We've got these methods, we love them, we've tested them, they work really well. We could actually use a delegate to decide which of those events to run based on a given condition. With our click event, our delegate function allows us to use one name. So we can see that we can have multiple methods associated with a delegate. The way we use delegates with the Windows form, we only have one method associated with our delegate. But when that delegate is instantiated, the associated method is executed. So here's a really interesting picture. Let's say we wanted to create a delegate for something else. We have this method, print number, where we're printing out some different things. We would like to be able to set up a print class or a print activity named print del. And when we run that line of code, we would like for this print number method to actually run. We can do that by setting up a delegate. Our delegate says that it is a type of print, which matches that class specification there. And then it says that it has a value. So this is kind of a really interesting syntax, and you get to work with it a lot. But here we're saying that whenever we are working with our print function, it's going to know what value to use, and that's going to be passed into this print number function. So way out there, it's a really advanced feature. We only see it in our form-generated code unless somebody gets really, really involved in trying to create a really effective application. We might see the use. So how is it used for us? Well, for us, here's our delegate code, this last line. So our event handler here is a predefined delegate. C# already has that set up. And it says, hey, whenever there's an event handler, we're going to run the method name that gets passed. So whenever we have our button one click event occur, the system has associated that event with the event handler passing in this parameter so that it knows this is the method to run. So it's a very interesting syntax. The plus equal is kind of really important and sets everything up. So our click property is a delegate that is of the type event handler, and we're passing in what method name to run when that event handler is activated. Getting some advanced stuff. All right, we've already done some of this, but to back up, designing an interface with your form, some different tools that you have, and some of you have had classes where you do more design, some have not. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on some of these different terms. A wireframe is a mock-up tool that's kind of a layout.
Excuse me.
Yeah?
Can I have a question about the last delegate?
Mm-hmm.
based on the syntax inside the initialize components, we have yeah, that one, the last line. So where zip dot button one click float equal to something. So if we add another line like similar to that, like this dot button one click float equal to another like methods. So when we click into the button one, we're gonna run two methods at the same time. Or
No, the
is
event
it
handler is only set up to handle one item, one method. So,
okay, just one method.
right. So you would have to, you could have another control or something that you activated that ran another method. But what you're doing here is so you can think about it as you could have maybe like an if statement in here that you said if this condition, then set up the event handler to be this button. But it's kind of
because when they give us like a float equal to, it means that maybe we can add another one. So what I guess.
right, and you could sure try it.
Okay.
So let us know and report back. That would be super
okay, we'll try it later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
try it. There's so much neat stuff you can do with that. And like I said, it doesn't get played with very often. But, okay, so here's our wireframe, and that is considered a mock-up tool or a form layout in Adobe XD because it's a pretty new package that's pretty neat that's designed to do these kinds of things. Again, I mentioned last time with Windows Forms, it's kind of hard to spend a lot of time doing these wireframes unless you were doing a design project where you couldn't access Visual Studio at all, or you didn't know what your tool was going to be. So sometimes you have to create wireframes from a third-party tool like this because you're not sure of your tool. But if you know you're going to be using Visual Studio, sometimes it's just so easy to create these wireframe layouts using the form designer that we'll see people just, try to combine their time. This step, though, is very important to decide how we want things laid out. Next, a storyboard. A storyboard shows interaction. So whereas a wireframe is like a snapshot in time of this one particular form, a storyboard can show interaction between multiple forms. So for example, this beautiful picture that I found here, if you click this display is going to happen. If you click this button, it's going to bring up some, another display that's going to have some spots that you can click. So you can see with the storyboard that this mobile app is a little bit more complicated, to say the least, than this individual form. So it requires a little bit more information to be communicated in the picture. Again, there's a lot of free tools with Adobe XD. I think they give you the capability to do some storyboarding. Now, a third term is a prototype. And a prototype simulates the functioning application. So I'm going to have things like buttons that pop up with a message to say, this button was clicked or something's going to happen. But that allows a user to kind of interact with the working product. For example, in this storyboard, it might be good for us to have a prototype where each of these events was actually wired to the next form design so that we can make sure it was actually a logical flow to the user, because they might find that confusing depending on what we're looking at. So prototype, we are kind of creating the user interface with a little bit of a working back end so that it looks and feels like the final product. We're going to use all of these tools to communicate with our users and other people to decide how we want things. So I wonder how much, go back to the check in the government, those people have been working. I have a former student who works for a company that does a lot of consulting for the government. So I don't know if he's working on the application that they were creating for people to check the status of their checks. But I want you guys to kind of think about that app. It's going to be a website, right? That's what they keep saying. You'll be able to check the status. I would say that there's been some people that have been working some pretty continuous hours to get that up and running. So definitely one of those times where you would become essential and really be essential. So get a really important thing. And then if there's bugs and stuff, you'll be like, no, it wasn't me. All right, list box. We've used this already. We've seen that it's a collection. It's a list of items. So the list box items property was our array. The contents of that items array is displayed in our list box. And we can use methods and controls or properties in our list box to get to that data. This computer club form is one of the ones that is developed in one of the YouTube videos that's out there on our channel. Now, in our application, we would like to be able to add, if you remember, the last thing that we did was we protected all of our detail fields because we don't want anybody typing in those unless we're in a controlled environment. We're going to let them add or modify or delete one of the existing CDs. Well, we might want to create a menu to allow that to happen. Here in this example, show you how to use a menu strip. And we're all used to be using menus in Windows. So we'll create a little application that uses one before we add it to ours, because otherwise it can be a little overwhelming. And then one that we did talk just a little bit about last time, it's asking if we could use it, and we sure can. WPF is the Windows Presentation Foundation. So we're working with WinForms, which are specific to Windows. We've seen that they have a lot of benefits, right? They use Windows Form Designer code, pixel-based resolution, you know, not dynamic, not responsive, totally just Windows forms. So there are good points, and they also have some weaknesses in our current environments. Now, WPF applications are designed more to run on multiple platforms because Microsoft has been trying to get where their applications run on multiple platforms. WPF, instead of using the Windows Form Designer code to design the user interface, uses XAML. XAML is a tag-based language with begin tags and end tags like HTML, so it's very familiar to people. Now, the good thing about using WPF is it's a vector-based resolution, so it's like resolution independent. We can get a much better look, and we can get those responsive applications because of WPF. So I would think that we would see the future moving towards this direction. But remember, the third option that's sitting down here that we don't have on this slide is HTML, right? HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and that's what a lot of businesses and organizations are moving to for their front end. So that's what even Frankie was talking about, right? That he's doing that front end stuff. The people that are doing the back end code are using C#. So we're seeing a lot of these front end applications move to web dev apps, which is fine. It's a natural progression. You as a developer are going to be more valuable if you know multiple options. So you might work for a small company. We've had lots of small companies that people have helped in the capstone class where the company does not want their computers connected to the internet. They don't want that bill. They don't see the reason. They can use the internet, you know, in other places. They just want their company's computers to be their own standalone network. You'd be surprised at how many companies feel that way. And for a lot of them, Windows Forms applications have just been the ideal solution. So we've seen in the capstone in the last couple of years, a lot of clients really, really liking their WinForm installation. So, you know, it's just a matter of choices. You guys have all the choices available, so you can decide. Now, here is a WPF app. Again, that's in that little PDF document, and there should be something out in the videos about creating this one. And lastly, tab control. when we're working with our Windows forms, we do have a tab control. Here's our little tabbies: pizza, beverage, specialty items. The tab control is pretty handy. It eliminates the need for multiple form apps because we can click our tab and change the content of what's being viewed. We can add items to each tab page. And then we could put common controls like our OK button down at the bottom outside of the tab so that the OK button impacts all the different tabs. So the tab control is another control that's available that's really powerful. Okay, just some things that we wanted to talk about. I want to get this cleared back up, so I'm going to collapse that back down and delete or close my Form Designer tab. And take a look at this application. Now I wanted to collapse it down, so I right-clicked and I did outlining, toggle all outlining. When I did that, everything was open, so it shut it all the way, closed it all the way down. I expanded a little bit, you know, like our class. But I wanted to kind of get a good high level view, bird's eye view, right, of our different methods. So the last one that we created was our enable disable. I'm gonna comment out this line of code that I added to show you how we could make that a toggle. In this application, I don't really want our enable disable to toggle, to reverse, because we might call it twice in a row to disable. That's okay, because it just depends on how our user interacts with our application. So for our purposes, we really do want that true or false Boolean value to be passed into us. So I'd like to look at a menu. Let's create a new project that's just going to have a Windows menu so that we can control those resources. Let's do File, New. And I want to create a menu app. So nothing super fancy. We'll just experiment with the control. And we'll go back to our other project. So I've got my form. Everybody okay? Okay. I'm going to set some form properties. My text property for my form. Just call this menu app. And then I do want to change my back color. I like doing that just because when we open things, we kind of get the feel of whether we're in the right application or not, if we're using different colors for different things. How about today? Let's see. I'll make it navy. And then I want our fore color, mine anyways, you pick whatever you want. I would like my fore color to be yellow. Or gold. So we're not going to be doing a whole lot in this application except displaying a menu. So whenever we are looking at our toolbox, we have a whole category of menus and toolbars. Now these items are going to be in the All Windows Forms Controls category, but let's just look at our menus and toolbars category. It's a little bit smaller and easier to manage. So what I want to do for this particular application is add a menu strip. I'm going to drag that onto my form. Menus are usually at the top, right, of our form. So that's kind of a common thing. So now I've got my menu strip up here at the top. We can see this white bar. Did everybody find it okay? Find that menu strip control. We want to make sure we've got that menu strip. Good, okay. So there's my menu strip. And there's this new area down that underneath my form that we haven't looked at before. So here's my form right down in this area here. Look at, we have this menu strip control. And we could actually click on this and bring up the properties for our menu strip. So either place. And we've got it. Now let's make our menu. It's pretty easy. What I'm going to do is click right here where it says type here, and I'm going to just start typing in what I want my menu items to be. Now with Windows, we know we have standard menu items. So the first menu we have is usually file, right? So I'll put file there. Now under file, we have lots of standard things. Like we know if we want to create a new file, we use the file new option, right? So our menus are set up that way. We're going to have new, save, all sorts of different things like that, as well as exit. So for our menu right now, let's just put in our exit. Now, as you click and type, you'll be able to see what's going on. I can run it. Now I should be able to see my file, exit. It doesn't do anything because I don't have an event procedure associated with it, but there's my menu getting started. So I'm going to close that. All right, so that's good, but it's not really complete. Have you ever been stuck without a mouse? You know that if you use the Alt key, it activates menus, right? So press Alt. When I press Alt, my menu strip, my menu bar gets activated, and I see little underlined characters beside the key letters. So if I want to activate the file menu now, since I've pressed Alt, I can press F, because that's the key for the file menu. And if I do that, the file menu will drop down. And then like if I wanted to do a new file, I could click the letter N, because that's what's underlined, right? So C for close. Some of the commands don't have key codes like that associated with them. Exit, it's the X. So how can we get those non-mouse sensitive items in our menu? It's really easy. In our file menu, I'm going to try to click back in there, and I want to put an ampersand before the letter that should have the underlined character. So I'm going to do ampersand FILE, and then in our exit menu, I'm going to put the ampersand before the X. Now I'm going to run again. And if I press Alt, I should see my menu activate. And I know that F will activate my file menu. Now I see my file menu, and X would make it active. Okay. So super easy. Now, besides the file menu, we usually have edit. Let's add edit. What should be our hotkey for edit? We have to press Alt to actually check, and it should be E. That's why the E isn't the hotkey for exit. So enter edit. Let's say we're going to put in some sort of font ability here. And other things that we could have, Windows menus are very standardized. You know that. You know, that's why sometimes I'm like, where are options? Are they edit, file, or tools? Because options are not very well standardized, but all of the other things are. So after file and edit, I want help. I'll press Alt, and I see that H is the hotkey. So enter help, and then we're going to create an about. And about is always the A, that's the hotkey. Okay, let's run that again and check and see if our menu looks good. File, edit, help, about. Oh, it looks awesome. Do we have hotkeys? We can press Alt and make sure that our hotkeys are showing up. Looks great. Everybody okay? Fast menu development. Now our menus, sometimes we aren't very nice to them. We forget about them, but we use them often. Microsoft found that out with Office when they tried to get rid of them, right? So what's the first one we should implement? Well, I want to let's put a control on our form so it's not just so empty. Let's put a label. And I'm going to put my text here as menu. About use the menu. And then I want to up my font so this is big. And I want to have this label control so that when we edit our font, we can see something happen. Okay. So the first menu option that we could activate is our exit. So if I click on File and double click Exit, that's going to create an event procedure for me. I want to go back to my form though. Now, when I have a menu control selected, its properties are displayed. So notice we have separate properties for every single menu control. So if I click back on our File item, it's called File Toolstrip Menu Item. If I click on Exit, it is Exit Toolstrip Menu Item. Those names are pretty good, right? So we're okay with that. They're kind of long, but we might want to shorten it to say Exit Menu, but we don't need to. So we have separate properties for every single item that's on our menu. So when we're looking at our exit, we could go to the events window and we could find the click event for that menu item there, just the same as any other property or control on our form. All right, so let's put some code in for that. We know that it's the application class that's running our form. So we should just be able to say, exit the application. Let's run it and see if that works. So that did it. We have our first menu item implemented. Now let's go back to our form. Notice I didn't create any sort of event procedure for our file menu. These upper menus, we don't have to do anything. You know, Windows will just control them. We just need to add code for the individual menu items. I'm going to skip our edit for a second and go to our help. Now I created this help about, and I said, oh, it's standard. And look, it uses the A as the hotkey. Is help about that standardized? Yeah. So any Windows application that is worth its salt should have an about option under the help menu. And if I look at the about option, it tells me what version of the software I'm running, what kind of copyright information there might be, different things about the software. Now, Visual Studio has a pretty involved help about, because it shows you all of the different packages that have been installed and extensions. And since Visual Studio is getting so huge, there's a lot of information there. But I can always get that information from help about. So we'll create our own. Double click the About menu item. And we want to just kind of display like maybe another form that says some great information about our application. Could we do that? There's a lot of ways we could go about it. We could use a message box. We've seen some message boxes. So let's create another form. We haven't used that before. So just like any other component we want to add to our project, we just can access the Add menu, and we want to add a new item, but Windows Form is also listed here separately. So I'll choose that I want to add a Windows Form. Now this is going to be Form 2. That's not a very good name, so I'm going to name it Form. We already have Form 1, right? And I haven't really renamed that very often or at all, because it can cause a little bit of a mess. But as we start getting multiple forms, it would be more important. Okay, so Form About, we can put a label on here. And in our label, if you notice when you're typing in the text, there is a drop down. And that drop down just allows us to make our label multiple lines or longer. So I'll put some things here. App version 1.0. And I'll make it really big. And we could put all sorts of information on here. Let's do a text box that's multiple lines. Now with the text box, normally it's only one line, but we could go to the multi-line property and change that to true. And then we can make it a little bit bigger. And then we can set our text property to be multiple lines. Developed by version 1.0. We're just going to add whatever we want in there. Let me go ahead and make my form smaller. And then I kind of need a button to close it. They could use the red X, but that's not very desirable of a way to handle things. So we'll call this OK, and we'll name it button OK. I double click my button. I'm going to say this form I want to close. So we have all these pieces again, and as long as we put things in the right place, everything works. Now, that should take care of our form about. So our form 1 needs to display that form, make it show up. So we've got our About toolstrip menu item, click Event Procedure here. We should be able to say that we want to instantiate a new instance of a form. And this is going to be a new form about. So this is the first time we've really used different keywords here. We're saying I want an instance of a form, and it's going to be called about, and it is the form about that I want you to use. Now we should be able to display or show that form. We have several options, and they do behave differently. If we use the method show, our form in the background would continue running, and that may not be what we want. We might want it to pause and wait until this subform gets done. If that's the case, we want to use show dialog. And then in our about form, when they click OK, we're saying, OK, close me. So we should wind up right back here at this form. So let's run it and see. Help, I want to see the about form. Oh, there it is, nice. Now I could, again, click the red X, but I can also click OK and close it. Everybody working okay? Go to menu, go in. Thank you. Yay.
I had a question.
Uh-huh.
When I was doing the menu thing, you said you could do it to do multiple layers, but mine like multiple texts in the form about. But then I can't get mine to go down to the next line. It's just stuck on one line.
On your properties.
That one, yeah.
Make sure to change your multi-line property to true.
Oh, okay. Is that what my problem is? Okay, thank you. That fixed it.
No problem. It's just, we have a lot of pieces in a lot of different places, so it can get crazy. Everybody else okay? Okay, so now I want to show you how we can use the font dialog. So when we're using Windows, we know we have that common look and feel, right? I keep saying that common look and feel. That's because it's important. And that's what allows us to use applications. And like over the vacation or whatever it was, I was trying to do some other things, and working with a Linux machine, one of the first things that I want to do is get a visual interface going, because I want that common look and feel. I'm used to it. It makes me more productive because I can do things in the way I'm used to doing them. One of the things that we're really used to being a common look and feel is the file open dialog box that Windows displays, the save and save as, and the font dialog box. Now, when we're here in Visual Studio, we see different applications do different things in Windows. We don't necessarily have access to the font dialog box. We see our font controls as properties. So I'm going to expand that font property. But if I were to click on the ellipsis square here at the end of the font property, mine says Microsoft Sans Serif 8.25, and then I've got the ellipsis. I'm going to click on that. And then I can actually bring up the font dialog box. The font dialog box is old. I mean, it's been around for a really long time. Still serves its purpose. I can choose the font, the style, whether it's italicized or bold, the size, some special effects, and then, you know, how it's scripted. And then we see a sample. So the font dialog box is handy. Now I'm going to cancel here and go back to my Form 1 design. So I want to implement that edit font dialog box in my application. This area down here that we saw our menu strip get placed in, this is the component tray. So whenever I'm using a Windows component, like a menu strip, we're going to see some information about that component or that control down in this component tray. So they can kind of be hiding from us. So we have to remember that that's down there. The font dialog box is the same way. Let's see. Here's dialogues. And if I expand, these are all of the different Windows kind of common controls like that. The Windows dialogues. There's my font dialog. Now I don't even need to put it any place on the form because it's just going to be displayed from that menu. But I do have to add it to the form so that it is put in this component tray. So now my font dialog is available to this application. If I look at the properties for the font dialog, you'll see all sorts of different properties, and they're going to be different depending on what we're looking at. And since we're looking at fonts, there's all sorts of different options. Do you want me to show the apply button? Do you want me to show different colors, show different effects? So many things that we can turn on and off in the font dialog. So how do we display it? Well, let's add our code. I'm going to double click on our font menu item. And then I should be able to display that font dialog. We're going to do, again, the show dialog to display that font dialog. Let's run that and see if it shows it. Pretty easy if that's all we have to do, huh? Well, that shows it, but that doesn't do anything with what the user says they're going to pick here. So here we go. We've got all of this stuff and all of these different things that they can pick. And then if they click OK, we want to change the font that's displayed here. If they click cancel, we don't want to, right? We want to just leave it the way it is. So we've got to add some more code. So let's go look. How can we do that? We could look at the Microsoft documentation. That would be a good place. But I kind of like to see some sample code, right? So I could look at some other places. Which places are you liking? There's a lot of new ones. C# Corner seems pretty good. I like .NET Pearls. They don't show a lot, but they usually have some pretty good examples. Haven't used that one at all. Let's try .NET Pearls. So they tell us a little bit about it. Font dialog presents our font selection dialog box. So they've got some stuff here to start using the font dialog. Well, here is where they're actually doing it. Show the dialog. Well, that looks a little different than our code. Let's change ours to be like that. So I'm creating a variable named result that is the data type dialog result. So that means when my dialog is shown, whatever key the user clicked to close the dialog is going to be returned in the result variable. That'll be the result of that dialog display. Did they click OK or did they click cancel? Okay, so that's going to give us a variable to take care of that for us. Now, how can we use that variable? Well, we can just see if result was that they clicked OK. So let's put that if statement in. And when I put my dot after dialog result, I get my drop down. That kind of gives me that warm fuzzy feeling that I know I'm doing things in the right way. So if dialog result is okay, they click the OK button. We want to apply that font to our label. We'll go back to our example then. So we get the font from our dialog, and then we apply the font to our text box. I'm going to copy these lines of code so I don't have to keep going back and forth. And then we'll get everything situated. Now, get that flash there. So the first thing we're going to do is get the font that they selected, and we're going to save it in a variable named font. Then we're going to update our label. What's our label called? Oh, label 1 with lowercase c, look at me. It's hard to remember that those controls violate all the rules. So in our label now, we're going to display, because of that .NET Pearls code, we'll actually display the font that they picked instead of those instructions we had earlier. So that's cool. We should be able to see it. All right, let's try it. So now if I edit the font, I'll pick one. And it displays the font. I don't think I got the size, do you? So we could spend a lot of time with fonts. One thing I'd like to try is when we run this again, notice the options that we have, and let's change some of the properties in our font dialog box and see how it changes the options that are available. So if I look at our font dialog control and our component tray, let's see if we can show color. And right now that's false. We're not letting people affect their color. Let's change it to true. And there's our color option. So we can really control how the font looks, let them have complete control over our form, depending on how we want to do it. Woohoo, we have our fully implemented menu. So a lot of this that we have, let's go back to our code. We could copy this, right? And we could use it in other applications, just changing things a little bit, because now we have a sample.
I got a question.
Huh?
When I go to the edit, when we go to the edit font and you try and change the color, mine's not changing the color to my text. It's just keeping it black of the
right, because you would have to put code in to change the color. So just like we're doing our font here, let's see if we could change it.
Okay.
We would have to put in, we want it to be our 4 color then, right? So we would have to look at our font dialog and see what kind of options. So it gives that we have show color and color. So I'm going to go with color since it's a property. That should be the color that they pick. Let's see if that has an impact. So with our font, that's what I'm saying, we would have to apply each one of those different things separately. So even though it's doing a lot of work for us, it still leaves lots of work left over. There we go. So it's still kind of not doing our size and things. So we'd have to fix those.
No, it does size, it's just that the default is 8. So when you change the font, you also have to change the size manually.
I don't think it changed mine, did it? Because the first time I did, I'll make it something we can see. I want to make it big enough to be able to tell. Oh yeah, it did, great. So the color in the other items that have the options in the properties to turn them on and off, we'll probably have to manually take care of each of those. We also have this show help option. We could turn that on. And then we have a help button. So lots of different things we can do. So working with those common dialogue controls, our menu strip and our font. As we work on our list box application, we want to add a menu to allow the adding of new items and things like that. So we'll try to put that in. It would also be nice if we had a toolbar, because you know everybody always likes icons better than menus, so it'd be nice to add that too. But then our next unit, we'll look at the common controls for file open and file close, and we'll start looking at reading text files into our application so that we can process them. So we'll be able to take advantage of those really important common controls in Windows, the file dialog controls. So we'll use them a lot. Now, because we have this little application, let's go ahead and add a toolbar to it. Menus and toolbars. And so whenever we have a menu bar, we're used to right under it having a tool strip, a toolbar. And a toolbar is just an icon that has an equivalent item, usually in the menu bar. So we don't very often find items in the toolbar that aren't also in the menu bar. Visual Studio, we have so many controls that does occur, but we try to keep it to where anything that's on the toolbar has a menu item. Okay, so let's add a tool strip. You see the control. I want a tool strip. I want it to be right here under my menu. So I'll just click there to add it. And voila, I've got my tool strip now down in my component area. Now, it's named Tool Strip 1. That's handy. And kind of like our menu bar, I swear I have turned that off so many times. Sorry about that. It's bound and determined to inform me. So in our tool strip, we could have all sorts of different things, right? Like up here, we have buttons. We have some drop downs that allow like text entry. We have some bigger buttons. So we can do that with this tool strip control. Let's do this drop down to add our first tool strip item. I think our first one should be exit. So let's add a button. Now my button has been added. So the button that I'm working with right now is this very first one that has the default kind of mountain scene. It is Tool Strip Button 1. Now I don't want that name. I want this to be Tool Strip Button Exit. So Visual Studio nicely named our menu controls, but not so much with our tool strip controls. Now, what I would like this to have is a picture, some sort of picture like people are used to seeing. And there's probably an image somewhere for file exit. Let's look at our image property. So on these buttons for tool strips, we usually have an image that is meaningful to the user. I'm going to click the ellipsis, and I could get a resource, and I would import that into my project resource file. I can go to my C drive where I have Visual Studio installed. And I have a lot of Visual Studio options. I think I'm going to try this folder that just says Microsoft Visual Studio. I'm kind of looking through here. Aha. So I'm in my Visual Studio folder, and I found a 2017 folder and then an enterprise folder. And when I open that, I see a lot of wonderful, wonderful things. And if I keep navigating and keep drilling down and keep looking, I'm going to be able to find all of the Windows images that are supplied and used in Windows Forms. So I could keep drilling down and keep looking, but there's a better place to go. So Visual Studio Image Library. The image library gives us all of the different images that we're used to seeing on a Windows form. So the standard file open image, the standard close image. And if you go to this download area, let's check our details. The one that we're going to download basically has multiple files available. So when you click download, it's going to prompt you to select which ones you need. Do you want 2017, 2019, the end user license agreements for those images? So you can pick all of those different things. Let's look at some file size here. 2015, this is the one that I downloaded a while back, was almost 3 gig. It took forever, but they realized that that was huge. So they did something, some compression or something for the 2017 library. So it's not really that big. So you can get that downloaded and then we'll be able to use it. The 2019 image library is even a little bit smaller. And part of that is compression, but part of it is we're moving towards simpler pictures in our toolbars, right? So we've got easier things to use. I'll go ahead and download. And you guys, this is totally up to your internet speed. I don't want you to download this right now if it's going to affect your Zoom session, because we're not going to do anything with it that you can't do later. I'm going to grab, I don't know, I'll get the 2019 because that's the newest one. I don't want the EULA, I want the images. Now mine is going pretty fast. It's just not going to finish. Do you like those kind of downloads that are like, I'm done? No, no, not really. I'm not really done. There it goes. Now I'm choosing showing folder because I want to see it in my downloads folder. And I'm going to extract that. but I want the extract to go to a different place. I don't want it to be in my downloads folder. So I'm going to browse and decide where I want to put that. I think I'll just put it right on my C drive. And name it Visual Studio 2019 Image Library. And say that's the folder I would like you to extract into. So it's going to take it a second. So I'll let that run. Now, while that extract is running, let's look at some of the other items that we have on our toolbar, some of the other properties. One that we use a lot that we might not realize is the tooltip text. So for the tooltip text in this button, I'm going to change it to say the app. Tooltips are usually short. They're tips. They're not just like a whole bunch of verbiage. So now let's run it. And because my toolbar item doesn't have a good image, it's still the kind of mountainy thing. But notice the tooltip. When you mouse over it, you get your tooltip that you set up. And then I want to make it active. So I can double click on this button and add some code. Now this thing needs to do the same thing as my exit button. And there's only one line of code. So I really could just use that same thing, but that wouldn't be very good programming style. So what I should really do is create a method. And put my code that I need. Method. And then call that method from both of our controls. So exit app. If they click exit on the menu, and exit app if they use the toolbar. Now, again, for the exit, it was just this one line of code. But what if all of a sudden we have requirements to add more, like we want to do a message box saying thank you or something like that as they exit? Well, now we have a really logical place to add that code, and we don't have to worry about duplication. So let's run it. And I should be able to close the app using my toolbar. So I need to do that with my other things too. I'll do that real quick. So my about. And we'll move our code. Call it. So there, I've got my about set up, and we'll do the same thing for our font. It looks like it's done. So we'll take a look at that in just a sec. I'm on a mission here, creating methods for each of our menu bar items. So our font app is going to have our font code in it. I'm going to move this tool strip exit click method. I think I can just drag it, can't I? Because I want it to be up here with the menu item. So now in my code, that's just me, and you might want it organized some different way. I have my menu bar, my toolbar, and the method that's used by both. So let's do the same thing now with our about. We don't really need an about tool strip item, do we? I think we only need a font. It'll be a button. And our tooltip text will be I want to double click it, and I'm going to move it to be with the other font. Whoop, there you are. And then it should copy our font type. Our font type method. Okay, so we've got everything pretty well set up. We see those images. So let's fix that. For our first toolbar item, I want to go to the image property and click the ellipsis. And I want this image to be pulled into my project's resource file. So I'm going to import it. And I saved that library to my C drive. Now, in that image library, we have all sorts of different folders with the different icons and images. So this is a file exit. So I'm going to see if there's an exit. Oh, there is. So I'm going to go into this exit folder. And it's exit 16 is the only one that's available. So I'm going to select it. Now let's run that. And then, you know, if you don't like that picture, you could use something else. That'll work. Now, what about our font? I'm going to change its image. I want to import it into the project. And I want to see if there is a font. I'm right there anyways. Is there a font library? Sure enough. So that one will be my font toolbar icon. So now when we run, we have our toolbar and everything should be working, right? Let's try our font dialog box. Pick it to the font color. Try my font dialog box again. Click some stuff. Then click cancel to make sure it doesn't do anything. Works good. So our menu application is running. We have some sample code now for a lot of different things. You can see why I didn't want to pile all of this into that other application that we were already working on, because it just would have gotten lost in all of the stuff. Now, if we look at form1.cs and view a class diagram, and we can see what we have added to that form. We have all of our different toolstrip menus and buttons for our toolbar. We have the methods that we've created as well as the ones that were created for us. So we've got a lot going on in this little application already. So next time we'll add the add and update to our list form. And it looks like we might need a little bit of time on Wednesday to finish that up too. So be working on your survey form. Is everybody okay with your hot and cold game? Anybody having any problems or questions with it? One thing that somebody brought up, I got a question and they said, it seems like it's hard to change the form back color. And that's true. It seems like you sometimes have to go to really dramatic ends to make that happen. So maybe we should consider putting a group box or something over the form so that we could just change the back color of that group box control instead of changing the back color of the form. So just something to think about, that, you know, when stuff doesn't really work the way it's presented and you can make it work in a better way. I know it can be confusing because assignments say change the back color of your form, but if you had another control on top of that form, it would look like you were changing the back color of the form. So that would, I promise, meet your requirements. So, everybody okay with that one? I like those, they're fun to play. I'll take them and I'll try to put all the executables in a folder so that everybody can try everybody else's and see how they work, because that's fun to do. And then again, with our survey forms, we'll try to do the same thing. So we're working, we're good. We're on our audio CD application. We'll add our maintenance stuff to it on Wednesday. Any questions or any comments for the greater good? See, a few people are here. Are you really here? Okay, hopefully that one will work out for everybody. And we didn't really work on our list box application today, but we got a chance to work with some common dialogue controls that are really widely used in Windows development environment, so should be pretty helpful to you. I know I have one person that's going to stay to work on TFS issues, and if you need to do that, please stay. Otherwise, thanks for coming in, and I'll see you Wednesday. Bye. Thank you. Hey, Martin, I do have yours, right? Do you see how there's just nothing in it? So I want you to remote control and show me where yours is so I can figure out where your stuff is going so I can find it.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop.
This is what I see.
And if you do that drop down up at the top, the one that says CIS/CIS150, it's in the blue. Yeah, that one. This one that I'm looking at, MW0922365, is that you?
Yes.
So why am I not seeing anything? Okay, so let's see if I guess go to the home screen. Is that where we are?
Yeah, I think.
I think so.
Or this is the home screen, I think.
You know, I think it's got to be a security problem, don't you? That they don't have it set up where I can see your stuff. I can't think of anything else because it all looks just fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing
I just
that.
can't see it. Let's see. Can you use the snipping tool and just snip that real fast and pop it into Discord so I can grab it, and then I can show them how I'm seeing something so different than what you. So I haven't graded your stuff because I can't see it, but we'll figure it out.
Do you want me to snip the entire screen or just
Yeah, get most of it because otherwise it would be so. That's good. Because I just want them to be able to see that the account is the same and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's going to be out of our hands. I think it's from the higher above. Thank you, sir, and I'll let you know what
Okay.
I hear. Okay,
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Anybody else have trouble with TFS that you want to look at? Or snoozers?